Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. In today's fun back-to-back comparison video, we'll be looking at two sport touring motorcycles. The first bike we'll look at is Kawasaki's Concours 1000, or GTR 1000, as it's called in Europe. The next bike we'll look at is Honda's ST1300, or Pan-European, as it's called in Europe. Although these motorcycles are really two different generations of motorcycles, they did go head-to-head on the sales floor for about 4.5 years between mid-2002 and the end of 2006. Since I currently have both of these bikes in the garage, I thought this would be a really fun comparison to do. The two particular bikes I'm using are a 1994 Kawasaki Concours 1000 and a 2007 Honda ST1300 ABS model.
In this video, we'll take a look at the specs of each of the bikes, and in just a little bit, I'll gear up and we'll take each one of these bikes out on the road to see what they're like to ride. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. The first thing we'll look at is the motors in each of these motorcycles. The motor in the Concours 1000 is a 997cc inline 4-cylinder, liquid-cooled 16-valve motor. It's fed by a bank of 4 32mm CV-type carbs. Power output at the crankshaft is 108 horsepower at 9,500 RPM and 72 foot-pounds of torque at 6,500 RPM. Looking at the motor in the ST1300, it is a 1,261cc fuel-injected, liquid-cooled V4. It features 4 valves per cylinder and it has dual counterbalancers. The motor is fed by a quartet of 36mm throttle bodies. Power output at the crankshaft on the ST1300 is 126 horsepower at 7,750 RPM and 94 foot-pounds of torque at 6,100 RPM. Performance-wise, in Cycle World testing in 1986, the Concours 1000 clocked off a 12-second quarter mile, and it went on to a 125 mile an hour top speed. Looking at the performance of the ST1300, it ran a 12.5 second quarter mile time, and it went on to a 141 mile an hour top speed. Looking at the frames on each bike, the Kawasaki Concours features a steel tube frame, and it uses a motor as a stressed member of the frame. The ST1300 has a triple box section aluminum frame, and it also uses the motor as a stressed member of the frame. The transmission on the Concours is a slick shifting 6-speed transmission, and that's mated to shaft final drive. In the ST1300, it's a 5-speed transmission mated to shaft final drive. In the suspension department, the Kawasaki Concours has 41mm forks up front. These have adjustable spring preload settings on the tops of those. Out back, it features an air-adjustable single shock with damping adjustment as well. Looking at the suspension on the ST1300, it has conventional 45mm front forks, and those are non-adjustable. Out back, it has a single shock with a remote spring preload adjuster and adjustable damping as well. The wet weight on the Concours is 671 pounds, and on the ABS model of the ST1300 shown here, the wet weight is 721 pounds. All right, enough talk. What are these two iconic sport touring motorcycles like to ride? I'm going to gear up, I'll bring the camera along, let's find out together. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Kawasaki's 1994 Concours 1000, or GTR 1000 as it's called in Europe. The first thing I'm noticing is that the seating position is quite comfortable. I have a little bit of a reach to the bars. It's a little bit maybe more sporty than I remember it being.
Although this was designed as a touring bike and the stock seat looks like a Corbin seat, it really kind of holds you in one position. There's not a whole lot of room to move around. Power from the 1000cc 16 valve Kawasaki engine is just smooth, and every time you shift gears and then roll in the throttle, it's just kind of a smooth whoosh of power. Yeah, this bike gets up and boogies. There's no need to rev it all the way to the red line, but the more you rev it, the harder it pulls. And this is still a stout performer. I'm actually a little bit surprised at how well this bike picks up. That was not maxed out or anything approaching that, but it just very, very quickly gets up to speed. It has one of the slickest shifting transmissions on any touring bike I've ever ridden. It's just brilliant the way this bike shifts so smoothly up and down through the gears. Corner turn in is very nice as well. At 75 miles an hour, it's very, very smooth in top gear. And the bike just whooshes out of the corner. It's got that jet engine sound to it, that little bit of Kawasaki whine. Another thing I noticed right off the bat when riding this bike is the wind noise. There is quite a bit of wind noise around my helmet, and I'm a tall guy at 6'4". If I were shorter, maybe the rough air would go over my helmet, but as it is, I really sit squarely in the buffeting zone over the top of the windshield, and so over about 50 miles an hour, this bike becomes somewhat loud. This is a common problem on the sport touring bikes and even bikes with the movable windshields. I sometimes have issues with them being loud through most of their settings. Wind protection on this motorcycle is very, very nice. It's very comprehensive. And my only complaint with a bike that's fully fared like this is sometimes in the summer heat, they can get a little bit warm. This bike has a new set of tires on it, and I just serviced the steering stem bearings, so the handling on the bike is just flawless. It turns in easily, and it just holds its line through the corner. And as long as you're not pretending you're on a sport bike, all is well. We'll pick up the pace a little bit here, see how it does in the corners. Even turns like that are quite easy on this motorcycle. It's very intuitive. The handling overall is very nice. At 55 miles an hour, there is minimal vibration coming through the bike. I have almost no vibration through the foot pegs or the seat. I do have just a little bit of vibration through the grips on the bike, but it's certainly not annoying. It's just the typical inline 4-cylinder vibes. The Kawasaki Concours had a 20-year production run, and over the course of that run it had one major update. And after riding this bike, I could see why that is. This bike is still such a nice place to be. Even though it's a 94, I can ride it today and enjoy it. I can enjoy the capability that it has. And even with over 70,000 miles on this example, this bike is an all-day comfortable bike that I would feel confident to take anywhere. It still makes great power, it still shifts beautifully, it handles great, and it's just a testament to how good these bikes were when they debuted in 1986. Still fun. I am currently riding Honda's 2007 ST1300, and I'm riding this back to back with Kawasaki's GTR 1000 or Concours 1000. And the first thing I'm noticing on this bike is that I am sitting more upright. This bike does have some handlebar risers on it, but even so, it's a less sporting riding position than it is on the Kawasaki Concours. Even though this bike is a 5-speed compared to the Concours with its 6-speed transmission, this bike is actually geared taller in 5th gear. And the V4 engine configuration also allows for more relaxed feeling. It is a smoother power plant. There's none of the vibration in the same frequency as there is on the Concours. The suspension on the ST1300 also feels more buttoned down. I have the rear suspension on this bike set up fairly firmly, as I do with the suspension on the Concours, and that gives a very controlled ride. This Honda feels very solid. None of the fairing is moving around at all as I'm riding it, and it feels a little bit tighter and maybe more well put together than the Kawasaki did, and that really has to do with age of the bike. You have to remember that the Kawasaki was originally designed and released in the mid-80s, so the design itself is actually a much older design than on this bike. Another thing I'm noticing right off the bat is that this bike, I've got the adjustable wind protection, and so on a warm day I can dial the windshield down, and I like that. It's quieter with the windshield down than the Kawasaki is. My helmet is in smoother air, although even on the lowest setting I do get some buffeting over the top of this windshield as well. Another thing I noticed is this bike has more low-end torque, and so out of the corners it really picks up revs very quickly. And this can become an issue if you're riding two up. This bike definitely has the advantage as far as just usable power at the normal RPM setting that you're going to be riding these bikes at. I really like the front suspension on this ST1300. It has very nice, very well controlled feel. To me, it doesn't dive as much as the Kawasaki does under braking. And I feel like I could ride this bike actually quicker with less effort and more confidence than I could the Concours. There's that awesome V4 punch out of the corners. This bike does have a 300cc displacement advantage over the Concours, so it's got almost a third again as much motor, and you can feel that from the saddle. I'll dial the windshield up on this bike, and I can dial it high enough that I get a much quieter envelope of wind protection in its highest setting. It also gets instantly warmer back here behind the fairing. And I know the camera's probably looking through the windshield right now. I'm a little bit taller and my line of sight is actually over the top of the windshield, so it's not hateful for me. I don't particularly like looking straight through one of the plexiglass windshields. I'm going to dial it back down. The transmission on the ST1300 is very smooth once you acclimate to it. However, it's not as instantly intuitive and instantly as easy to use and as smooth as the slick shifting Kawasaki. Because of the more upright seating position, this bike is more all-day comfortable for me than the Concours is, but it's a matter of degree. I can easily ride a Concours all day long without being uncomfortable. This bike is just more comfortable. I'm always amazed with the ST1300 how confidence-inspiring it is in the corners. This bike always feels extremely well planted, and I just don't have moments where I'm wondering what the bike is going to do. It's also very easy to manage at low speeds. The handling on this bike is superb at low speeds. That's a good example there. Engine just picks up speed without carrying a ton of revs. Pulls hard right to the next corner. Oh yeah. Corner entry is brilliant. Hang on. Oh, that's fun. I think it's appropriate to do a comparison between these two bikes. There was overlap in the production cycles of these two machines, and this Honda just clearly demonstrates the progress of technology I love the fact that the ST1300 comes with optional ABS brakes. This is the ABS model that I'm riding now. That gives just a little bit of extra rider confidence. This bike does have the added complexity of linked brakes, and I'll be honest, I don't think the complexity is worth the performance advantage. I would rather this bike just have the simpler standard front brakes and standard rear brakes, and those function separately. But the link brakes are pretty transparent from a rider's standpoint. You don't really notice them as you're riding. If I had to use one word to describe the riding experience on the ST1300, it would be poise. This bike always just seems to be in control. It seems very relaxed in the way that it goes about everything it does, whether you're just tooling down through the countryside or really opening it up in a sport riding environment. It's so well controlled. It doesn't wallow around on its suspension. The brakes are adequate for the size of the bike and for the power output. And not only is this bike comfortable, it is really, really entertaining to ride when you want it to be.
All right, man, what a lot of fun. That was a little bit of a surprising result for me. When I was riding the Concours, I kept thinking, man, this is so good. I don't know how the ST1300 is going to be any better than this. I really like the feel of the power plant in the Concours. I like the slick shifting 6-speed transmission. The bike handles very easily for a bike of its size and weight. It has very nice range to it. It's an all-day comfortable bike. It has excellent wind protection, excellent mirrors. It's a comfortable machine to spend a long day on. The luggage on the Concours is easy to use, it's efficient, it's easily lockable, and it has a nice carrying capacity. And even though it's an inline 4-cylinder, it's relatively smooth as well. When I ride the Concours, I really feel like I am down in that motorcycle. It's a fairly sporty riding position, especially compared to the more modern sport touring motorcycles. And while the Concours is all-day comfortable, it's not nearly as comfortable as the ST1300 for longer trips. There are some definite, tangible advantages to the ST1300. The first of which is it's a fuel-injected motorcycle. The second of which is it's got the adjustable windshield from the low position to the high position. It can be altered with the push of a button. That's very nice. I like the fact that this bike comes with the ABS brakes. The brakes overall, even on the non-ABS version, are more confidence-inspiring than those of the Concours. The ST1300 also offers an adjustable seat height, so you can set it all the way low for a little bit lower seat height than the Concours, and then you can raise it up 2 more settings and it'll actually be higher than the Concours seat, and it definitely gives you more legroom than the Concours as well. And then there is that motor. The motor in the ST1300 is one of my all-time favorite motorcycling engines. It's a big V4 and it just produces so much more horsepower and so much more torque than the Concours at any RPM, and so it just decimates the Concours in the Top Gear roll-on contest, and that's even with taller gearing than the Concours has. At the rear wheel, the ST1300 makes about 20 horsepower more than the Concours does, and it also makes 20 foot-pounds more of torque than the Concours does. And that is a huge advantage, especially on a bike that only weighs about 50 pounds more than the Concours does. Additionally, the big V4 motor that's found in the ST1300 is significantly smoother than the inline four-cylinder that's found in the Concours, and I really like the solid button-down feel of the ST1300. The fairing doesn't rattle as much over sharp bumps, and the ST1300 is one of the most versatile motorcycles I've ever ridden, and it's one that I hope to have in the garage for a long, long time. The only real downside that I see to the ST1300 as compared to the Concours is the ST1300 is a little bit more of a complex motorcycle. The V4 itself is a more complex motor to work on, as well as the linked braking system that this bike has. It's more complex than the standard braking system that's on the Concours 1000. All right, I'd love to know what you guys think. If there are any ST1300 fans out there or Concours 1000 fans out there, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.